Oh, hey, how you doing? I'm just doing a little bit of dust control here. I'll be with you in just a minute. Just hang on. I'll shut the water off because I've got a couple of things I want to talk about today. And I'm going to make some wet spots here if I don't pay attention to what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get dust down. I'm not trying to turn it into a mud puddle. Hang on. I'll be with you. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is some of the tools that you're going to use and how to use them, or well, maybe how not to use them. Well, I did a video on this a few years ago, and I said your tools and when not to use them, because almost every tool, there is a time not to use it anymore. Particularly stuff like your flag. That's early stages of training type stuff that. After a very short period of time, my personal experience is that after maybe, well, I don't know, varies from horse to horse, but anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour with a given horse, that's pretty much the last time you're going to use this thing. But I want to talk about some of the tools that you're going to use because I got a couple of them here to show you and talk about. And some of them that I don't particularly care for much is, well, this one here would be one of them. Now, typically this would have a piece of rope attached onto this. And I don't know, the last time I saw this one, this isn't mine. Last time I saw it, it did have a piece of rope on it. Typically it has a rope about as long as this fiberglass shaft. It's fiberglass with a handle. And certain clinicians and trainers have got a special name for this thing. And I think you know what I'm talking about, at least one of them, one of the fairly well-known ones. He has his own name for this thing. And what was really funny is I walked into a store one day and I saw them advertising it as that, by that name. And I kind of chuckled. They were asking for a lawsuit using his name because I'm pretty sure it's copyrighted. But there's actually a couple guys, they got their own name for this thing. But I'm going to tell you what it really is. It is called a training stick. That's it. You go into any store, you can buy these things for about a third of the price that the person paid for this one. This one was actually purchased at a clinic from one of those guys that gives it a special name. And you can go to the store and buy one of these things for about 1/3 the price. Typically, like I said, they have a piece of rope on them, and it's called a stick and string. Why they call it a stick and string, I don't know, because it's actually a rope, not a string. It should be a stick and rope. But I actually used to have one years ago. I made one. I believe I used a broom handle, and I duct taped a piece of rope onto the end of it. The horse didn't know any difference, but the way they teach you to use these things, I'm not fond of because they can actually lead to bad things. Well, first thing I don't care about is the fact that these things are actually pretty thick and kind of heavy, and after a while you wave it around, your arm gets tired. That's one of the drawbacks of these things. That's kind of a personal thing. If you got strong enough arms, you don't care, I guess, but my arms aren't as strong as they used to be when I was much younger, so I find the weight it makes a difference. And these things, although it doesn't seem like a lot, it makes a difference. Now, I kind of wish it had the string on it, but that's okay. One of the things that I don't like about these things is the way that most people are taught to use them is if the horse gets too close to you, you just tap it on the shoulder. Just tap it. Well, that's okay if that's all you're doing, or if it gets too close, you can poke it in the ribs with the handle or the other end. Either way, whatever. But what I don't like about that is the fact that it involves touching the horse. And that tapping can very easily lead to hitting, and it can go from training to abuse very quickly and easily without even you meaning to do it. So that's why the training stick or stick and string, not one of my favorite tools. If you use one and you use it well, that's okay. I don't have a problem with it. Like I said, the weight I don't like, but that's a personal thing there. Like I said, what I don't like is the way they're used. And personally, I like to do something before the horse gets close enough that I can tap it. I don't want it getting that close. I want to stop it before that. And that leads me to the flag, because that's one of the great things about a flag. What I like about a flag is you can use this thing before the horse gets close enough to touching it with one of those training sticks. You give it one of them, and that horse could be 15 feet away from you, and he's going to get the heck away from you if you tell him to. That's what I like. Plus, it's quite lightweight. Like, this thing weighs, well, not even half of what that training stick weighs. And in close quarters, which is where you really need the safety, these things are excellent tools. They can be used in very close areas. That horse can get pretty darn close to you, and it's still useful. At the same time, it can also be useful when the horse is quite a ways away, because you don't have to touch the horse with it. That's one of the things about it. But I also want to talk about one other aspect of the flag that I haven't mentioned before. And I said it's important to know when it's time to quit using it. But on rare occasions, and I haven't had it happen to me, but I have heard of it happening, so I thought I'd share this with you, is occasionally there is the time where you don't want to use this thing at all. Well, sometimes it's kind of just unnecessary, because if you got a horse that's sensitive enough, just spinning the end of your lead rope will do the job. You don't really need a flag. But occasionally horses, very rare occasion that is, a horse may actually really not like this thing. And there was one fella that he opted not to use a flag when he was working with one horse, because, well, it was a bit of a problem horse, and it was a little aggressive, but it really didn't like that flag. And he kind of read the horse and the way it was reacting to the flag, and thought, you know what, if I wave that thing, he might attack it. I don't think I'm going to use a flag, because that's for my safety as well, because if they attack the flag, they might attack the person holding it as well. And, well, so you got to, and I've talked about, even if you do use one, you got to, figure out exactly how much to use it, how hard to wave it, and everything with each individual horse. Don't come running in like a lunatic. You got to come in real gentle with the thing. You got to come in nice and slow, bring it in nice and slow and easy, and see what it takes to make the horse respond to it. Now, so that was something I really thought was important, is even though, like I said, I've never personally had it happen, you might run into a time where you might be better off not using it. So just keep that in mind. But I want to talk about, it's sitting side by side now, I get a comparison. I've never done this before, but my Lunge Whip is almost exactly the same length, oops, knocked it over, as the training stick, because I've modified this one. I've shortened it. I actually cut it down here, pulled the outer part off, cut the fiberglass rod down, put the rubber tip back on, and there also used to be another little string inside of this to give it more weight. I took that out. I want this thing as light as possible, because I'm not trying to hit a horse with it. Now, I won't say I never do. I have touched a horse with this. Well, actually, I do in desensitizing, because you do the same thing you do with that stick and string, is you throw it over the horse's back and pull it off, and that. And you can do that with this thing, because it's exactly the same length as one of those training sticks. And I didn't intend that. It just worked out that way. It's actually pretty much almost, I think it's about an inch shorter. That much, not much. I didn't plan it that way. I just knew that from experience, I'd had one that I'd resurrected from the dead and ended up being quite a bit shorter than a regular Lunge Whip. And I just discovered how much I liked it. So, this is something you can do, is you can actually take one of these things, and don't be scared of wrecking it, because they're not real expensive new. I believe last time, I think when I bought this one, I think they'd gone up a bit. They're up to about $18 now. And I just took a sharp blade, cut around just ahead of the handle to cut this outer sheath, slid it off. That left me with the fiberglass shaft, and then I could cut that down to whatever length I'm comfortable with, slide this back on, and then I just took some tape and wrapped it around here to hold it back on again. There you go. I've been using it like that for a couple of years. And as you can see, the string part is quite a bit longer than the shaft. Typically it wouldn't be, but because I've shortened the shaft, but I did not shorten the string, it is a fair bit longer. But one of the advantages of one of these things, and one of the reasons I left it long, is that at a distance, because there's times for a flag and there's a time for a lunge whip. And if you happen to be working in a larger area and you're a fair distance away from the horse, you got a little more reach with one of these things than you do with a flag. And even though I'm not trying to actually hit the horse with it, sometimes I want to get close to the horse to put the pressure on. And this is far more effective, at greater distances. You can, it's effective at probably 3 times the distance that a flag would be. And that's my personal experience. It's just a little bit different thing. And experimenting a bit, you'll figure out what works for you too. Because, well, not all tools are created equal, and everybody's got their own personal preference too. Like I say, this isn't you can't buy them like this. I made this one, but I wasn't too worried about wrecking it because, like I said, they're only $18 new anyhow, so who cares? I chop it down, it makes me happy. Works for me, I don't care. Actually, I'll give you an example here. This is a typical lunge whip. This one has not been altered, and they actually do come in different lengths too. This one I do believe is a little bit shorter than some. I've seen some that were considerably longer actually. So they do come in different lengths, but as you can see by the string versus handle length there, the string is almost exactly the same length as the shaft. And that's what it would be like when it was new. That's probably about the size mine was when it was new. But again, I've modified it, so mine is now different. Something else I want to show you too is when it comes to the flag, this one here is actually a store-bought one. I wouldn't recommend the average person buying one because they're pretty pricey now. I don't know, they've really gone up in price. This one is considerably less than what they're selling for now. I don't know why they jumped so much. I guess they figured discovered there was demand for them, so suddenly we're going to stock them now, because when I got this one, they just brought a few in as an experiment to see if they'd even sell. I guess they discovered that they do sell and decided they should charge more. But as handy as a flag is, you don't have to go out and buy one. You can make one. This one here is actually made. You've seen it before in my videos if you've watched them. It's homemade, and I just leave this one in the arena here. It's been getting used a lot. You can tell it's getting kind of ratty looking, but that's okay. It didn't cost anything. That was a corner off of a tarp that was going to get thrown out, and this shaft and handle, what used to be a lunge whip, that was going to be thrown out as well. So the whole thing cost me a little bit of hot glue to put it together, and that was it. Other than that, maybe 50 cents, something like that. But hey, works. Horse doesn't know any different. He don't care. The only downside to this one, it is actually a tiny bit heavier than the store-bought one that I got. But anyhow, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the tools that you can use. Like I said, you can modify a lunge whip. There's a modified one. Actually, I'll get him a little closer to the camera. You can see the difference. I'm going to stand him on the ground there. And there's the length of the modified one. There's the length of the original one. You can see the difference, how much I've cut off, about a foot. Some of these actually do come a fair bit longer. I have seen them longer because you can actually get them in various lengths, brand new, but you can't get them this short. I had to make this one. But it's okay, like I said, for $18, go ahead, chop it up all you want. You ain't got much to lose, and you might end up with something that you're going to be quite happy with. So there you go, modified in a stock lunge whip, store-bought flag, homemade flag. Actually, it's another thing I never noticed before. I never compared the length, because when I made this one, I just kind of whipped it together in a hurry. I never actually checked the length, and well, Actually, it's a tiny bit shorter than my store-bought one. Oh well, works. Horse doesn't care. And up until now, I've never noticed. And of course, your training stick, minus the string, which is actually a piece of rope. I don't know why. No, I've never figured that one out. Why do they call it a stick and string? Anyhow, the official name of these, this is called a training stick. If you go into a store to buy one for about 1/3 of the price you're going to pay at a clinic for one of these things, I'll tell you, don't ever buy one of these at a clinic. But they're about 1/3 the price in a store, and they're nothing special. You know, these things are not unique to any individuals. You can go out and buy one at your local store for about 1/3 of the price, okay? And it's going to work just as good. And, well, if you're a cheapskate like me, and I'm prone to making things, you could probably make one. Like I said, I used to have one years ago. It actually consisted of an old broom handle where I just spiraled some tape on for some grip, and then I duct taped a piece of rope to the other end that was about the same length as the broom handle, and there you go. Horse didn't know any different. I wouldn't recommend something that rigid. Actually, even this one, too rigid. It is flexible. There's a tiny bit of flex to it, but even these things, because years ago, since we're talking about training tools, years ago there used to be something called bamboo training, whereas the trainer would use, instead of a fiberglass didn't even exist back then, but instead of using one of these things, they'd actually use a length of bamboo rod, similar length, maybe a little longer, shorter, I don't know. And that's what they would use for training. Instead of a training stick, they would use a length of bamboo, and it was called bamboo training. And unfortunately, that kind of came to an end when there was an accident. Because, and this is one of the reasons I said, this isn't flexible enough for my liking. Because what happened was, due to the fact that the bamboo is quite rigid, lengthwise. It doesn't compress, it doesn't flex. What happened is the guy had it out in front of him, and the horse kicked it, hit the end of it dead on, and that thing went right through him and impaled him. And that was pretty much the end of bamboo training. So that is my word of advice if you're going to make a homemade tool for anything, whether it's a training stick or a flag or anything like that. I would suggest strongly that you use something that's quite flexible, more flexible than this even, in the event that, the odds of something going wrong, pretty slim, but in the event that something goes wrong and you get kicked or something, you're not going to get impaled with the thing. It'll just bend or break even. Who cares? It doesn't matter if it breaks, if it saves your life. Breaking's a good thing. So anyhow, just thought I'd give you some tips on tools and talk about a few things, the pros and cons. Like I said, the training stick, not my favorite tool. I wouldn't use one. I wouldn't buy one. I did make one years ago. I haven't used one in many years. My tool of choice these days is a flag, but the Lunge Whip is also quite handy too. But like I said, stock Lunge Whip, no, I don't like the stock Lunge Whip. They're too long. I suppose if you only use it as a Lunge Whip, that's okay, but the way I use it, I tend to use my Lunge Whip more like a lot of people use a training stick when it comes to things like desensitizing and such, because I will take this string and throw it over the horse's back and pull it back, kind of like you would do with your training stick. I use it very similar to that. I do a lot of the same things with my Lunge Whip that a lot of people would do with the training stick, and this thing is significantly lighter, more flexible. It's also versatile because of the length of it. I can still use it as a Lunge Whip, which that doesn't need to be done a whole lot, but it's a handy tool to have. Anyhow, that's my little rant on tools. You got your stock, modified Lunge Whips, homemade, store-bought flags, and a training stick minus the string. These are some of the more common, the three items, the lunge whip, the flag, and the training stick, are probably the three most common things that you're going to find in a trainer's arsenal. And one other one that, actually I don't have one in here right now to show you, is my lead rope. I have a lead rope that I use for training. And again, it's a personal preference thing. I know another guy, he always uses a slightly longer lead rope for training. And I don't know how many times he's been asked, how long is your lead rope? Well, his particular lead rope, I'm not even going to say because I can't remember for sure. But personal preference, everybody likes it a little bit different. And I honestly have not decided yet what I want. I've worked with different lengths of rope, and I am not convinced yet exactly what works best. The one I got is pretty darn close. I might shorten it yet, but I don't know, because the one I'm currently using is 18 feet, and I think maybe 15 might be a little better. I have heard of guys using 13s. Some guys use 13s. Your standard lead usually comes in one of two lengths. They're either a 6 or a 10 foot. 6 is pretty much useless in my opinion for anything. I actually did train a horse once with a 10 foot. It's not ideal. I don't like it. There's a lot of things you cannot do with a 10 foot. I would say at least 15, although a lot of guys like a 13 and it works for them. Personally, I would like at least a 15. I think that would be good. The one I got currently is an 18. The one I had before that, I believe was, I can't remember, was that a 20 or 22? Can't remember now. I found that one a little too long, and even the one I got now, the 18 foot, I'm always debating whether or not I should cut a little bit off it. Some days it's a tiny bit too long, but there's also times where I actually like that length. So, and for something like that, for a training lead, you can buy one of those. You don't even have to go to a tack store where you buy your horse supplies to get one of those things, because in fact, well, that would actually be the more expensive place to get them, and a lot of times they don't give you much choice of lengths. And although there was one store, doesn't anymore, but they used to sell rope on rolls, and they'd sell it by the foot, and that was actually where I bought my first one. The last one, the one I got now, I actually bought at a boating store where they sell supplies for sailboats, and it's actually, again, it came off of a reel, and I bought it by the foot, and it was only $1 a foot, so it cost me $18. If you were to go into a store and buy it, they got all kinds of oddball lengths. I saw one training lead that was like 36 feet. I don't know what the heck you got to do with that. You get tangled up in that stupid thing. But they also wanted like 50-some dollars for the thing. And I'm like, no way I'm forking out that kind of money, especially when I got what I need for $18. Why would I spend 50? I'm a cheapskate, That's just the way it is, and that's why I've got things like modified lunge whips and homemade flags, too. You don't have to go broke buying tools to work with your horse, especially if you only got one horse and you're only ever going to work with one horse. Something like the homemade flag, I've said this many times in my videos, is the homemade flag. You can make out just about anything, an old fishing pole cut down, a CB antenna. I actually was talking to somebody that they used the shaft off of a golf club, because it was about, I guess that'd be about the right length, wouldn't it? Yeah. So a shaft off of a golf club, because the shaft is actually separate from the head. And they're generally quite light, graphite, something like that. They got a nice grip on them. And I'm not sure how they attach the flag to the end, but they've been using that golf club flag for years. So use your imagination. You can make one out of anything. And if you're only got one horse to work with, I sure the heck wouldn't waste my money at a store. Goodness sakes. The one I have, I kind of like this one, and it is quite light. And I got lucky, and when I bought it, they weren't horribly priced yet. Now they've gone up about another 25%, and that puts it right to the point where I don't think I'd buy another one ever, even if I didn't have one. Especially since I found out how easy it is to make one. Man, like I said, that one cost me about 50 cents. So there you go, folks. That's what I wanted to talk about today, is tools, how to use them, when not to use them, and like I said with the flag, the important thing is you got to read your horse. Actually, the same is true of the other tools as well. Flags in particular, though, for some reason, you really, really got to read the horse. Make sure that you're not getting them too angry, and figure out when it's time to quit using one and put it away. Because especially if you got a long enough lead, the end of your lead, I did another video not long ago where I demonstrated how you don't have to use a flag. You can use the end of the lead. And on a lot of horses, they're sensitive enough that that'll probably do just fine. You probably never ever need a flag. You don't actually need a flag for all horses, okay? It's not one of those things you have to have. It's like I've said many times in my videos is, there's more than one right way to do things, and you don't have to do things a set way. You can use your imagination, and depending on you and your horse, there could be quite a few different ways of doing things. So anyhow, just thought I'd throw this stuff out at you again today. And who knows, maybe in another couple of years we'll talk about this stuff again. Have a good day.